Cool, cool, cool. All right, then. So, sorry to everyone. We're back. We had to switch up technology and make sure that we are good. I am certain that if we are not, my wife is going to let me know about it here sooner versus later. But I am checking as well and make sure that yeah, I can hear me. So let me get some sound levels on everyone. Jody, are you there?
Oh, yes, we're here.
All right. And Travis, are you there?
I'm right here, ready to rock and roll.
All right. And Hassani, are you there?
The most troubled one. If you can hear me, I'm ready to rock.
Oh
Oh
man,
man, we're
come
good.
on,
We're
let's
we're
go.
golden now. We're golden. All right, all right. Thank you everybody for your patience. We just had ran into a couple of technical difficulties. It will happen from time to time. But it looks like we're back and rocking. And so hopefully you'll join us again and you're back with us and what have you. And what in the world? All right. So what we were talking about was about that vulnerability and that struggle to be vulnerable. And Jody had talked about having a good example. Travis talked about not necessarily having that example.
Right,
And then Hassani, you were starting to kind of tell us where you're at in that scope about just that if there's that struggle to be vulnerable with the wife.
So before I continue, can you hear me okay?
yeah,
We can hear you,
Okay.
man. We hear you
Want to
good,
make sure.
and you're perfect. You're crystal clear
Okay.
now.
So really quickly, Ozzy, come on, baby. Right when I got it together, you want to get on the phone.
it ain't one thing, it's another, huh?
Bad
I'm
life.
striking out today.
Yeah.
But really quickly, so growing up, I was a major softie. I was really
Mm.
sensitive, like everything. I was just always whining about something. And growing up, my peers used to just kind of make fun of me. Acting like a baby, you're weak. Toughen up. And so I kind of programmed myself real quick, like, okay, I need to toughen up a bit, otherwise I'm forever going to be a target. So it took me a very long time to get vulnerable. Luckily, my wife, actually encouraged me to confide in her, when I'm going through something. But just growing up, society kind of teaches men to be emotionless, to be heartless,
Right, right,
just to kind
right.
of just endure whatever you're going through. And so, when I had those, those issues, whether it was, whether it's paying bills or children, it took a little bit of time to really just say like, maybe this is really bothering me, or I'm really stressed out, or I'm going through, I'm really going through something mental right now, where I'm just kind of feel like I can't make it. And luckily, she has the understanding, or at least she lets me talk through it. At first it was kind of like, well, I'm expecting her to say, well, you better figure it out,
Mm.
or you better,
Mm.
suck it up and find a way to make it happen. But luckily, she was able to say, hey, it's going to be okay. I'm going to hold my fort down, and whatever you need me to do, I'll be in support. And so, luckily, I'm able to have that support with my wife. Did it take a little bit of time? It did. I had to really take the time to, reprogram myself that it's okay to be vulnerable at times. And I just like Jody was saying, I had a father who didn't really express, much sorrow if he was wrong or any kind of remorse. It was kind of like, and we moved on. And it was one of those things where I had to sit there and think about it, like, well, if I'm wrong, I need to be an adult about it. Because now that
Right.
I have three boys now, and so I have to make that apparent that if you are wrong, then you have to show that vulnerability that it's okay to be wrong, because leaders take accountability for their actions.
Right, right,
Right.
right,
Right.
right, right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, just kind of give my answer on this is um so I kind of grew up, I didn't have my biological dad for most of my life. But then I had a great stepfather who was there, but he was very much a solitary man. He was a great provider. I know he loved me. He taught me a lot. Like, some of the things that my friends they can't do. They're like, man, I wish I knew how to do that. Like I was telling Jody before we went on air, I just got my shed and working on turning that into a YouTube/man cave studio. And except for I want to live, I could probably wire it myself, but I'm afraid to mess with those type of things. But he taught me a lot of those type of things. He didn't teach me how to wire a sub panel, but I could probably pull it off. But he taught me a lot of those things. So a lot of my friends are like, man, we don't know those kind of things because there's not much I can't do because of how he trained me. So his approach to training me was this. I always tell this story, and I'll tell you a short version. Water pump went out. We identified, he got out there with me, identified the problem, why it was overheating. After he identified the problem, he showed me how to go down to the parts store, order parts for my car, information I'm going to need, got backed his truck up, let the tailgate down, put the tools on the end of it. He said, you see that right there? That's the water pump. Same way you take it off, the same way you put it back on, and went in the house. 4 hours later, I figured it out because he had already shown me how to do a fan belt. He had already shown me some other basic things, and this was a 1976 Plymouth, so it was easy to work on. But because of that, I know how to change a starter in almost any car. I know how to change my own oil. I know how to do brakes. I know it's a lot that I know, but to say that he was that man that was this open vault was not so. I don't really know a lot about my stepfather, and when he died suddenly. So, had a massive heart attack. So I didn't really get that. So I was never taught that male vulnerability. Now, add on top of that, the fact that for a long time, until me and my dad really reconciled and got to a good place, I felt abandoned and rejected. So now it's easy for me to wall off. It doesn't matter who it is. It is easy for me. I am a master mason when it comes to kind of walling off. Yeah. And so that makes it much more difficult for me to open up to my wife. And it's almost easier for me to open up with people I don't know because I'm not really worried about them hurting me than it is to open up to my wife, because vulnerability requires you to be open to hurt.
That's a great point.
Yeah,
so that was my thing.
No.
Yeah. Jody, you were going to say something?
Well, there's an interesting dynamic as a husband and as a father, right? In one aspect, we're supposed to have all of the answers. We're supposed to be the leader of the family with our wife side by side with us and counsel, making good decisions. And I think a lot of times when a real heavy challenge hits the family, we naturally want to bear that on our shoulders.
Right.
And, just a couple weeks ago, I was thinking about some events that are happening in our own family. And I literally go for a walk. My wife's doing something else, and I just go for a walk, and I'm pouring my heart out to God. And I'm like, look, how do I be the strength for my kids and my wife during this thing when I myself am struggling with this really heavy situation?
Yes.
And the impression came to me very clearly. He said, be the strength while finding the strength, and I will be the strength for you. And so I've just, and I later talked to my wife about that, because she's like, man, Jody, how come you don't cry? How come you don't express your emotions? I go, well, two things. Number one, I may cry, but it may be in my own private meditations and my pondering. And it's not that I don't want to share that with you. It's just at those times when I'm really pouring my heart out to God, that's when it comes out. And so then I'm like, all right, I've got it out of my system. I'm like, all right, now I can be the strength that you need. So when you're pouring your heart out to me and, just crying and trying to get it out and work through the challenge, instead of breaking down together, one of us has already been through that. And so we can be a strength for each other. And I think there are times when it happens both ways. But I think what's important about that is that I shared that with my wife. And a lot of times we don't share that. We just like, I had this experience. I'm going to go be the strong man. Right.
Right.
This is what I was working through this morning.
Right.
And this is, what I've come to the conclusion, and I'm going to be the strength for you. And we're going to be the strength for each other.
Right.
But you have to open up.
I can tell you, man, my particular challenge is multifaceted, but I can tell you one of my particular challenges is like I lost, like I think it's 2010, my stepfather passed away. It was maybe about 3 years or so ago, my mom passed, and then my dad passed after we were starting to get a relationship. My family never really saw me grieve, my kids nor my wife. My mom, on the day that she decided that she was going to elect hospice and she was tired, I cried at the moment she was telling me. I can tell you exactly where I was. I was on Orange Avenue in Tallahassee. I just turned off on a particular street coming by a VA hospital. And as soon as I turned on the Orange Avenue, the tears started to flow. And then, because I heard the resolve in her voice, and I told her I was going to, by the time I got to the stoplight, I said, Mom, I'm going to miss you. We talked a little while more before I made the left turn. And I didn't cry again until I didn't even have the strength to cry. I did her eulogy and I did my dad's eulogy. But I didn't even have the strength to cry until I was sitting in this very room, maybe 3 months after she had died, and the tears just came out of nowhere. That is how much of a master mason I am at walling off those emotions. And I know it doesn't help, and it is an area where I struggle, but it is one of those things that I hear repeatedly from husbands of really having the ability to be vulnerable and open to struggle and or to be vulnerable. And I know, because I'm a marriage coach, right? It hurts your marriage in the long term. If you don't have a wife that's compassionate and understanding of why your walls exist.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And to your point, for me, and in my marriage, it hurts our connection because it's hard for me to show empathy when she's going through things, because I just want to bear it and I just want to solve the problem. Whereas it's hard for me to just to sit down and talk with her and empathize with her.
Right.
It's been a real struggle, especially now with all of the dynamics, and we can go on a whole nother talk about just the dynamics of having a wife that's a stay-at-home mom that's working from home now, trying to teach at home. I'm out and about still working, and that's a whole nother dynamic. But it's hard, it's definitely hard for me.
Yeah.
That balance when I feel like I have to be the father of the house, but still be able to connect with my wife and be empathetic and sympathetic and show that love. And it's a dance.
Yeah.
I think one of the ways that this is something that I've done that I think has really helped open up my heart to my wife so that she can receive. Years ago, I don't know why, but I came up with the idea of creating, and I actually started it on Valentine's Day. I have a little pink booklet that is love notes to my wife. And so rather than write it on a Post-it where it gets torn away and thrown away or whatever, she has this little book, and every once in a while I pull out that book and I express my feelings towards her, maybe, how we're struggling through this challenge, my mad respect for her, and how much I'm honoring and appreciate everything she's doing for our family. And I think that's important. We have to find ways to express the true, honest feelings of our hearts to our wife so that they know that we're just not this stoic man with no feelings, but we truly do love and cherish him. We're just, it's like when you walk in the room, sweetheart, my heart lights a fire. I mean, to this day, it's been 33 years since we've been dating. She walks in the room and, dude, I get the pitter patter still, right? But how many of us feel that way? And how many of us express that to my wife? And she goes, oh, you're just being silly. I go, no, sweetheart. that's the way I feel about you.
Right.
What do you do with that notebook, Jody? Do you share that with her? Or is that just something that you keep?
Oh, no. Yes. So that's a good question. So what I do is it's actually in the little cubby right next to our bed, and she keeps it there. And whenever I want to write something, I go pull it out, I write it, and then I leave it on her pillow. I leave it in the bathroom. I leave it someplace where she's going to find it, where she can read it just to herself. And then she usually comes out, gives me a big fat kiss, and then puts it away till next time.
That's interesting. That's interesting. That's a great idea. But that's being innovative, and that's even it's at work. I'm known for being an innovator. It's what I do. It's what I enjoy. And even at home, I like to create. But there's some areas that it's hard for me to innovate because one of the things that will definitely kill innovation is fear. So when you have that fear, it's hard to innovate because the fear is fear of failure. But if you're going to be a really great innovator, you cannot have a fear of failure of like, well, what if they don't like it? What if she would have said, this is nice and all, but you can take your little pink notebook somewhere else. I don't even like pink, right? Like, dang it,
Yeah.
so from there. So let me shift a little bit, still staying somewhat in this vein, and I'm going to start with you, Hassani. Is what do you find has been, and again, let me give the disclaimer. Feel free to share whatever you want to share, but just make sure that if what you share is going to put you on the couch, that Marriage Refresh is not held liable for any back pains for you having a bad couch. So tread lightly if by chance is going to put you on a lumpy couch. All right? So with that being said, I'm going to ask this risque question. So what would you say was, and you don't have to go into detail, but because I'm really more after, how did you come through one of the toughest spots in your marriage? If you want to share what that was, you can. But how did you, when you think about one of the toughest spots in your marriage? I've been married October next month. It will be 22 years. Yeah, catch up, little small time. It'll be 22 years for me. So in those 22 years, we've had some ups and some downs. I'm actually teaching in our Bible study about forgiveness. And we did an episode on forgiveness, and now I'm teaching on how to find peace. And I realized when we were doing our forgiveness episode that there's some areas I still have some forgiveness work to do regarding my wife and other areas. But in that maybe toughest time you had in your marriage, how did you come through?
Well,
what got y'all back out of it?
Well, first, let me say this. My wife can't send me to the couch. I've been on the couch for the past month before this baby got here. So that's been home for me.
So speak freely, my brother.
and now that football season's here, I'm going to stay here.
There you go. Come on.
and watch my Lions lose the next 4 games. But you know what? I'm an undying fan, but at the same time, it is what it is. The Lions, that's a whole nother topic for all the time.
Yeah.
But the time that I was most vulnerable in my marriage, and if you don't know, my wife and I started Twin Flame Coalition. We're marriage coaches as well. We wrote a book called Fasting, Make Your Love Electric, and it's based on our story. We went on a fast before we got married, and come to find out during that fast, my wife confessed to me that she had stepped out, and going through that type of vulnerability where it's like, I can't believe you've done this, to me. But even though we came to an agreement to work it out and to move forward, to literally be in a vulnerable position, to look at it as saying you betrayed me, and in heart, in my heart, it's like we're working through it, and we're going to get through it as an adult, as adults, and we're going to push forward, and as you said, you would like to be forgiven if you would do the same thing. to sit in that hurt and, lay with that person next to you and wake up to that person next to you, knowing what they have done. And I'm not, bashing her by any means. I'm just, just answering the question. But for her to have to sit there and watch me, kind of be kind of in a disoriented state for a very long time, a lot of resentment, a lot of anger, was definitely very hurt. And, and you know what? I'm gonna give her a lot of credit for this, because you know how when someone hurts you, they kind of keep bringing it up. Well, you remember the time, you remember the time. Well, that was me. And and my wife, and she looked at me. She was like, "Yeah, I did that. Now what?" And at first, I was like, "That's the most disrespectful thing that you could say. Like, how dare you? Like, I'm about to walk out the door right now." But and I had to think about it. And it's like, okay, I made the decision to forgive her. I made the decision to work it out. So, am I going to put this behind me or not? And it was one of the most adult decisions I had to make, to stop bringing that up, stop, letting that be the controlling factor in our relationship, because obviously we worked it out. We started a company behind it, helping other couples, get their relationships together. And so to be in that state while, working on the marriage and, kind of fixing all the broken patches, it really put me in a really, I don't even know if vulnerable is the word, but it was just like, I was just like a set duck. Like, imagine you're in a boxing ring and you took that big cross, that big right hand, and you're in the ring stumbling. You haven't fallen yet, but you're stumbling. You're about to go down, and just to be in that state for a very long time really put me in a lost, in a lost state rather, until we worked it out before. But yeah, it was definitely a difficult time, and happy that I went through it. And now we teach couples that you can get through infidelity, you can get through anything in marriage.
Yeah, and I would say something, man, because a lot of times, you brought that up. I'm getting some feedback from somewhere, but you brought that up, and what's interesting to me is, I'm getting feedback from somewhere. I'm not sure. Okay, there's better. But you bring that up, is that a lot of times it's believed, societal, that men don't stay. And if they do stay, it's like they stay and they're waiting for their opportunity to do it back, right? And so just to hear you say that issue and how y'all came through it and what it caused y'all to build as a result of that just is powerful, is really powerful.
And I'll be completely honest. I did have those thoughts. I did have those, those moments where, the woman at the job, she kind of knows what I'm going through, and she's kind of extending herself, if you know what I mean. And I had the thoughts. I mean, we're all human, but at the end of the day, I had to be the person to say, if I were to get my revenge, so to speak, where does that leave us?
Right, right.
Where does it leave us? Because then you have two people, that are developing trust issues, and so yeah, it was a difficult time. And I'm not saying that I did not entertain it when I had the opportunities, but at that point, you had to really dig deep and say, how badly do you want this? And and then being a man, in our our egos tell us that you can't take an L in life.
Yeah.
Because if you take that L, you're not as much of a man as you thought you were. So to not only go through this and not have a support system while I'm going through this, that kind of temptation was kind of getting pretty tempting, because it was like I didn't have anyone to go to. So why not bury my problems, being involved with someone else? But at the same time, you got to look at the bigger picture, and that's the route I had to take.
Right. Okay. Cool. I appreciate that, brother, because that's some transparency that I believe is going to help somebody here tonight for sure. Because it is something that you have to press through and you go through your thing. Jody, Travis, which one do you want to share next?
It's interesting. I love that he shared that because I think a lot of times the challenges that you encounter as a couple can be so overwhelming that you can naturally put up these walls to each other. And I love his example. Early in Judy and I's marriage, our second year was really, really challenging for us. And what I learned in that year was that we were kind of struggling. We were working through, how are we going to build this strong relationship together? And we just made the commitment that every night we were going to kneel in prayer together, and we were going to turn our twosome into a threesome with power and trust that God would anoint our marriage and make it better. And what that did was not only did it invite him into our marriage, but it also put me and her, but probably more me, in an attitude of receiving that which was on her heart that she was pouring out to God and saying, you know what, I really want this to work out. These are the things that I'm struggling with. These are what I want to happen. And it put me in an attitude of humility where I could receive and be able to look at myself and go, you know what, yeah, maybe I need to own that. And if we're going to have a strong relationship, we have to come together with full purpose and trust that he'll make it better. But you have to turn your twosome into a threesome with power.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. T. Scott.
Well,
it's 13 months, so you probably ain't got a whole lot.
Thankfully, the normal small stuff, we haven't encountered a major, roadblock, in our relationship, our marriage. But, obviously, if we don't, correct some things and, I, get humble and, and grow, I can see how, later on, things can linger and get worse, but thankfully, yeah, we haven't gotten any big ones, so I'm thankful. That's why I'm here, so I can correct them now so we don't have any, or as little as possible, because you're going to go through stuff. I get that, but as little as possible.
Yeah. I think that's very, very important that you can't forget. And I know that's what my heart is for Marriage Refresh. I'm certain that's what that is for Twin Flames and for Father's Fire. And my goodness, Jody, the podcast, you and your wife.
Choose, don't excuse.
Choose, don't excuse is to get to a place of helping people prevent stuff, because it is a whole lot easier to deal with it, prevent stuff, go through it in a preventative manner. Like, you go to your doctor and he says, hey, you need to work on your weight or you're going to have a heart attack or something crazy, something's going to go on. It's easier to work on it in preventative mode than after the fact. Like, well, now you had the heart attack, you got it. It's a whole lot different thing. And so I think that's something powerful. I think, when we went through some of, definitely one of our toughest times in our marriage is, man, it took something. So not to sound overly spiritual, sometimes people just don't believe, but it's like I grew through the experience. I grew so close to God. And the reality is I was starting to grow closer to God before we went through the challenges we went through. So I got there, and God was actually about 6 months or better before he says, hey, son, I give you the power to build or destroy, but I wish that you would build. And he would repeatedly say that to me. At least once or twice a week, I would hear that. And then we got to a place where we had to deal with some things, and truly life and death was in my hand. It's like, hey, what are you going to do? How are you going to approach this? How are you going to attack this? And because I had started developing a relationship with him before the fire, it allowed me to choose life over death. And so in that, I got to a place where I was like, hey, man, I don't know if I can hang on to this anymore. And I just heard this voice say, let it go. Like, I don't know if I can hold on to the rope. And it's like, let it go. So I let it go and I didn't fall. And so that was my first time where I could truly, without a shadow of a doubt, say I felt God's hand in his full power, because I was supposed to fall and I was supposed to wreck everything in my fall. And so a lot of conversation happened that helped us get to healthier places. But man, it was that challenge, because I look at it, and if you follow us, you know, our big thing is marriage has to have purpose. And if you cannot find purpose in your marriage, man, your marriage most likely will not survive any true storm, right?
Can you unpack what you mean by that when you say purpose? What do you mean by that?
Man, you have to find a reason greater than the two of you for why you would be together. It has to be something that serves higher. It has to serve something higher than yourself. If your marriage collectively, first as individuals, then coming together collectively, does not serve something greater than just raising kids, having a career, having a nice house, doing those type of things. If it does not serve something higher than goals, then your marriage will not survive difficult storms. It won't.
Yeah, I love that question, Travis. And I guess I would answer it this way. When I said I do to my wife, I meant I do in every single aspect of our life. My mission as your husband, as your friend, as your confidant, as your lover, is to make you feel like the queen you are. So my purpose, my number one purpose as your husband, is to serve you. And I tell that to my kids. I'm like, look, you're my kids, and I love you, but your mom comes first. Hands down, your mama comes first. And so I've just really tried to center my relationship with my wife around building her, supporting her, loving her. And what's happened is I've received 5,000 times more than I ever gave to her, right? But I think in that serving her, it's built a strong, not only relationship, but it's built a strong family where we could endure, especially some of the challenges that we've gone through the last couple of years. And we couldn't have done that without that kind of purpose and foundation of just, I'm here to love and make you feel like the queen you are.
Jody, can you unpack a little bit more the dynamic of the kids and the wife dynamic, and how you're able to, separate that to, because that's something that I'm struggling with now, more. My son is, approaching 4, and he's more durable, he enjoys the things that I like, and I just so naturally gravitate towards him, but it pulls away from my wife, and I just, sometimes I don't even see it. And then, it's 9 o'clock at night and it's time to go to bed. And I haven't said one word to my wife, but I've been playing with my son for 2 hours. So could you unpack that for me?
Yeah, no. And that's, I think every family deals with that, right? Especially when your kids are younger, they're so demanding on your time. Mm-hmm. But I think especially with younger kids, one of the things that younger couples struggle with is, how do I leave the kids at home? How do I trust them with grandma or nana or auntie or a babysitter, right? And so a lot of times the struggle becomes, you're not taking any time investing in you as a couple. So our kids know that one night a week, mom and dad are on a date. They're going out the door, they're going to dinner, they're going to a movie, they're going shopping, they're going out. And you kids, we've entrusted a great babysitter, we've entrusted your aunt or whoever, and we've just made that a weekly thing.
Was that early on, or did that happen when you got older? Okay.
Just very early on. We started, when we first had our first kid, I'm the oldest of 8 kids, so I was used to taking care of kids, right? My wife was the youngest of 2. And so having a baby, she's like, there was a lot of kind of learning on her part, me learning to be a dad. And I just said, look, we're going to start, even though Devin, our oldest, is, nursing or he's doing a bottle, we're going to once a week go on a date. And we just, for the last, our kid's 27 years. So even, since, almost 9 months after having him, when he could bottle and all that, we've gone on a date every week. And you need that. You need that time to rejuvenate that relationship. Sometimes it's just a kind of of emotions and frustration as the mom or you as a dad, right? But you need that time to step away and reconnect as a couple and come back. And so we've just been very, very diligent. The other thing that we've done is we, for the most part, try to reserve Sunday as a time for family. So we go to church, we worship together, we play games together. We don't have our kids go play with other friends. It's a family day, right? We try to, all right, guys, we're doing this as a family. The other thing, and this came later, this came actually when we adopted our kids, we started taking, Judy and I would alternate kids every month. So we would take one of the kids out on a daddy-daughter date or a daddy-son date and a mommy-son date. And so it gave us one-on-one time with the kid, and they got to pick where we were going. We put a cap on the budget, and it gave us some one-on-one time. So we've tried to create this environment where Judy and I have one-on-one time, the kids and I have one-on-one time, but we also have family time.
I think the key to that is how intentional you are with that.
Yes.
Like it's planned, it's organized, it's strategized, by you and your wife, and that's important. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Sonny, you're running with kids that are a little younger. How's that happening for you guys? In that dynamic of the kids and still being able to be connected as husband and wife.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned that because my wife and I were just having a conversation. And our mission statement is leading by example. My wife is coming from a divorced home, and so her being married is kind of breaking those generational curses. A lot of people, their folks, weren't married. A lot of people on my end, on the side of the family, weren't married either. So, especially in the African American community, a lot of us aren't getting married. So, our mission was to encourage other people to build strong families, and it takes place with marriage. And I say that because one of the biggest struggles that we have is getting out, to spend time together because the lack of support that we do have. Other people are trying to live their lives, don't want to take on, now 3 boys, let alone 2. And so, we really have to scramble to find someone to say, hey, the wife and I like to go out for a couple hours, or even when we do events. A lot of times we have to, when we're doing book signings, we have one baby on the hip and the other baby on a tablet, just to keep them quiet while we're either lecturing or answering questions. And so when we do find that sitter, we typically go all out. We'll try to make a weekend out of it. Do like a hotel. Go to a city we haven't been to, walk around, shop. Make sure we have the hot tub. Since we don't get it very often, when we do get it, we do go all out. Like, I'm really hoping that, depending on, how COVID is behaving in the next couple of months, hopefully when she, gets together, I'm trying to get her to rent one of those slingshots and, drive around the city, have a good time, because my wife's not a big thrill seeker. I tried to get her to go skydiving last year. She wasn't with it, but
I gotta do that.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm a thrill seeker, and so trust me, when we do get sitters, and it's funny because we tell people like we pay well, but it's just the handling two young boys with one on the spectrum, one with autism is very difficult for a lot of people to understand. But trust me, when we get that okay from somebody, we're gone. Just bags packed. We're
out of here.
We're off to another city, and usually we come back really rejuvenated, and it really helps out. But that's kind of where we are with that.
That's cool.
Yeah, and that brings up an interesting thing because especially with you having a kid on the spectrum, when we first adopted our two kids, the first 2 years, we couldn't leave the house because there was so much trauma and everything, right? So one of us was always home or my oldest son was home. And so what Judy and I would do is we actually would on date night, we would make sure all the kids were done down in bed and everything was good. And then we would stay up late and we would make cookies, we'd make milkshakes, and we'd go into our bedroom, we'd watch a movie together, and we made our bedroom the escape, right? And so sometimes due to your dynamic, you got to get creative, right?
Yeah,
And so you
absolutely.
may not have the babysitter, but there's still ways to go. You know what, sweetheart? We're gonna go do something really fun. I have something planned out for you. We're going into our bedroom. We're gonna shut the door, and you know what? We're gonna watch a movie. We're gonna play games. We're gonna do whatever. And it's just you got to make that time, no matter how you can find it, and it allows you to open up your hearts to each other because it gives you that time to be together.
Mm.
And I think that's part of a lot of times why husbands are perceived as not being vulnerable is because they never have the time to open their heart together as a
Yeah,
couple. I
yeah.
mean, when you're working all the time and going here and taking care of the Jim Bob and all that, it's like, when can you even say, I love you? Here, peck on the cheek and say it.
Yeah.
Yep.
That doesn't create, connection.
Yeah. No, I will say, hold on. I'm going to ask this question first before I say it. So I'll make sure. You do a good job at going on date nights, having date nights, Trav,
No,
T. Scott?
terrible,
No?
terrible.
Good. I'm terrible at date nights. I wasn't going to be out here alone. All right. The two guys over here
Yeah,
are
let's stay
great
over
at it.
here.
When they get the shot, the other guys, I'm
Yeah,
horrible.
yeah.
I'm horrible. You
I'm
guys
with
are making us look bad. Hassani, you have a reason, and as soon as you can, you take it. Jody is the overachiever, and
right,
he's every week and making all of us look horrible. But
right.
me and T. Scott, we're holding it down over
Come
here
on, come on.
for not being good. But we're gonna get better.
Absolutely.
We're going to that is the mission, man.
Yeah,
Starting next week.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
gonna get creative. Whatever we got to do,
yeah.
date night once a week. We got to make it. I got to make that a priority, and it is important. But we also got to practice what we preach, because we tell people that. So, yeah. So yeah. Okay, cool. So, yeah,
I was
go
saying
ahead. Sir.
to be fair, my wife and I, she just got upset with me because I ate her leftovers
Uh
from
oh.
yesterday. Hey, the rule in my house is you get 24 hours. If you don't eat it, it's fair game. It's fair game. And so I made nachos yesterday, and she didn't touch them. So I was like, okay, you must not want them. And it's the second I ate them, she was like, do you have those nachos downstairs? Like,
Nope.
no. Like, you know the rules by now. So, I'm constantly in the. I'm gonna probably stay on the couch for a while. So.
Yeah.
Man, that is so important. That is so important. I'm gonna close us out on this, man, because you guys have been so gracious with your time, and endured technical difficulties. So, I can tell you already that I'm gonna probably get, hey, y'all can't wait so long till the next one. So we'll have to do this more frequently. The ladies like it. The husbands are even liking it because they appreciate the raw honesty and the transparency. I'm gonna close it out on this. What is one of your most cherished memories with your bride? What is one of your most cherished memories with your bride? The moment that sometimes you think about it and you want to cry. Maybe it doesn't move you to tears, but it gets you close. Talk about putting guys on the spot in the couch.
Yeah. For me, it was honestly when I proposed to her and having all of her family around. I don't think I've ever that type of emotion in my heart, like this was right, like this was the right thing to do. And then the weekend we had together, that we had by ourselves, it was something that I think about a lot. So for me, it was that moment, just getting on one knee. She had no idea what was going on, and just to see the expression on her face, really about to happen. That was something special for me, for sure, 100%.
Okay. And I'm gonna ask a question before we go around to the other guy. Jody, I know that your wife has a alternating schedule. Is it synced back up to a Tuesday where she's available on Tuesdays, or is it?
Yeah, she's still off Wednesday, Thursdays. So
Okay. I'm going to try something. I'm going to talk about something at the end of this, see if you guys are open to it and if we can plan a date. I would like to do a marriage roundtable. Bring your wives with you, and we can do it on an off day. It doesn't have to be on a Tuesday. We'll just make it a special episode. But if you guys would check your calendars on a date so I know our window is going to be a Wednesday, Thursday. We normally have Bible study on Wednesdays, but that's from like 7:30 to 8:30. So if we did it around this same time slot, I'm sure we could make that. So yeah, if you guys could just everybody else out and talk with your wives, don't commit your wives without talking to them. But I'd like to do a couples roundtable and probably grab a couple more couples, maybe at least one more couple to see if we can get them all in. But
Sure.
to that regard, I just would love to, all of us like to get some of those reactions of the wives. Like, is that the version you're going with? Right?
Yeah.
my wife will do that. Oh yeah, my wife will do that.
Oh, yeah.
So that most
I'm putting my best face forward. She's gonna chop me off. So
so that most cherished moment, Jody, and then I'm gonna go, and then I'm gonna let Brother Hassani close us out. So that most cherished moment.
the first thought comes to that very, very, very first kiss across the altar. I mean, that was the sweetest, most beautiful, intimate kiss, in front of everybody. I mean, that was absolutely beautiful. But, with that said, every day, even when we're going through really challenges, I see so much beauty and strength in her. It's just truly inspiring. And I remember one experience, and forgive me for sharing this, but I remember one time I was about 15. We lived in this porous house in Colorado. I mean, it was a sieve. I mean, the wind just blew through it, and it was cold. It was a Sunday. And my dad and I are laying on the sun trying to warm, and we're just basking in the sun. We're not saying anything. And that weekend was my parents' 25th wedding anniversary. And just out of the blue, my dad said, son, when I first got married to your mom, I thought I loved her, but that was just puppy love to how I feel about her now. And I can honestly say, I know exactly what he feels like.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so every day, and Judy and I work out, this morning we were working out together, and, I playfully bit her in the butt when she bent over. Doing that. I'm like, it's like, she's like, I'm all sweaty. I'm like, that's okay. I see the beauty in you every single day. And so it's just a wonderful journey, even on the tough days. And we've had some tough days the last couple of years. So
Cool. All right, I'm gonna share. For me, man, it's so many different things, but I think for me, one of my most memorable, really, is probably around the birth of our children, and the reason why is, my wife was determined to make sure that she gave birth without an epidural, without pain medicine, because she didn't want to take any chances of those things impacting our kids. And the level of sacrifice that takes when you understand that when a woman is giving birth, she is actually closest to death because of the pain level and the stress that it puts on her body when she's delivering. To understand, to make a intentional, active decision that for their health, I'm willing to go through it, to make sure that we have healthy children, and that if there's something that goes wrong, it won't be because I introduced something for selfishness. Not selfishness, it's understandable selfishness, right? For selfishness' sake, for my comfort, I didn't want to jeopardize them. And for me, that meant a lot, even though that sounds like it's about the kids, but it meant a lot to me of seeing that level of sacrifice from her. And so that does have, my wife tells me, she told me one day, we were just going back and forth. She's actually kind of irritating me. And she could probably tell. And she says, she looked at me and she said, "You're my favorite person to argue with." And I was a little perturbed, but I couldn't help but laugh. I was like, okay. But she said, "You're my favorite person to argue with." But that's a great thing when your wife wants to argue and draw close with you. And looping back to where we were about vulnerability, sometimes they try and force their way in, and it feels like a porcupine because they're really just wanting to get close. But just seeing that level of sacrifice was that thing is one of those top 10 memories for me. So, Hassani, bring us home, brother.
Well, you actually made it the perfect transition, and I won't be very, very long. I know that we're probably still coming down from the high of it, but probably this recent birth of our third son, we did a water birth here at the house. And, we were going to do, with the first two, we were going to do a water birth with both of them, but we had some complications. And I know for her, she felt like she wouldn't have been her journey into, womanhood and motherhood wasn't complete until she actually delivered, a child without a C-section. And the determination and the extra vulnerability she put on herself to make sure this happened really had me, in awe. Just to see her that vulnerable in the pool, like she's literally depending, on me to help her get through it. But she was so determined that she didn't want to go back to the hospital. She didn't want to, have any extra complications because having a child in the hospital is a very difficult process. A lot of noise, a lot of things are going on all at once. So, she, basically was like, here's how I would like to have it. So we set up the pool right in our living room. We did everything. I was with her every step of the way. And the fact that she fought through that and persevered through it, it made me have so much more respect for her and so much love for her that she was so determined that she wanted to do this, for not only for herself, but for the benefit of the child as well. We were able to, obviously the child got examined and everything else we needed, but just being able to be of something so special and for me to actually catch my own son, was something very,
man, that's awesome.
It was such an experience. There was nothing like it.
I can only imagine. Wow.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Hey, man, I think that takes us home, guys. I want everybody to definitely check with your wives. Would love to do really, really soon, within a couple of weeks, a couples episode, and just really kind of get into it, man. But I appreciate your time. I appreciate your patience with our technical difficulties. Probably in the future, we'll just use Restream from RIP. And I'll see how they hold up in these circumstances. But I really am appreciative of your time and your transparency and your wisdom. I think it's going to help a lot of marriages. It's helping me. And next week, T. Scott, I'll be calling you like by next Friday.
Come on.
Have done some date night stuff.
Come on. Turn into a competition. Come on. I like it.
That's happening. Whatever it is, you gotta have done it. And if not, I'm calling the brothers on you, and we're gonna shame you in public and all this good stuff.
Accountability. Come on.
But I really appreciate you all. Don't forget, just want to remind our viewers, check out Jody with Father's Fire and Youth Don't Excuse. You can find both of those podcasts. We didn't get this at the beginning, Hassani. You have some YouTube stuff, and Twin Flame Coalition has some stuff. You want to just tell the people a little bit about that right quick, how they can get in touch with you and your wife and connect with you?
Absolutely. TwinFlameCoalition.com, Twin Flame Coalition on Facebook, Instagram, and they're from my own personal channel, helping men better themselves a day at a time, is Coach Ali's Corner on YouTube.
All right, Coach Ali's Corner on YouTube. And Jody, you, for your two podcasts, you're everywhere, right?
I'm everywhere I can get on.
Yes, and it's Father's Fire spelled how?
Fire with a Y, so FYRE.
Yeah.
And then mine and Judy's is Choose Don't Excuse.
Yes, yes. T. Scott, you got anything out there we don't know about, like how to avoid having date night or something like that?
Not yet. I need to start something up into what not to do.
What not to do when you first get married. Got you. And of course, you can catch us on Marriage Refresh at www.marriagerefresh.net. You can watch Marriage Refresh TV episodes there. We hadn't really been working on our podcast a lot lately. So what we're doing here now, if you can help us out, go and subscribe to the Marriage Refresh TV YouTube channel. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers so we can do some things a little bit differently. So until next time, I appreciate you guys. I'm going to be looking about hearing from you. I'll give you end of the week, early next week, to when we can get together and do some couples. I think it'll be fun. So till next time, appreciate it, fellas.
All right. Thank you. Good night, fellas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great.
Yes, sir.